Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Canole, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. And on tonight's show, we are not slowing down. Last week, if you guys have been paying attention to the videos, we uploaded our most recent title match between attempting to defend champion Amadou Moses taking on the contender Jay Burns. Now, this is the first warning you will get. We will not spoil the results of that match until the end of this video, as it will be spoiled during the interview with the winner of this match. So again, just be aware, if you have not watched it yet, you can wait until the end of the match and then it will be spoiled. So either if you want to go check it out now or wait, watch the match, and then go check it out at the end. Either way, but you have been warned of when that spoiler will come. But aside from that, we are not slowing down the train on this show, as it only takes 1 week and we are immediately into our next number one contenders match. And we have two competitors who are coming in here tonight off the back of different recent results, but both of them have most certainly earned it, as we have, returning for the first time since last season, Henry Sanchez, who obviously was a two-time defending champion. He was a 2 defenses last year during his championship run. Because of that, he earns the right to a number one contenders match coming into this season, and he will be taking on somebody he is very familiar with in Austin Howell, who, off the back of a great tournament last year, had the opportunity to play for a number one contenders match, a match which he won against Will Cohen. And we're going to start by speaking to him first. Coming in with a record of 6 wins, 4 defeats, and 3 knockouts, he is Austin Howell. Austin, welcome back, sir. And as we said, yeah, you had a tough road to get here and earn that. You went through the tournament last year, made it through the semifinals. You came in earlier this year, played Will Cohen, took that match to a victory, and put yourself in a number one contender spot. So my first question to you is, this is on record the second time, but in the history of the league, the third time you've played Henry. You guys played in an exhibition match one-on-one. Both of those instances, you were not able to pull out the victory. Is there anything that you feel in this match can go your way to change that result?
I think it's just experience can go my way. When I first fought him, I only had like 2 matches or something under my belt. I was still relatively new into the league. Me and Henry had really only known each other for, a couple of brief months when we had our first fight. And yeah, it's kind of surreal that it's like almost like a bookended thing, where the first time we fought, we were fighting for sort of a last chance into the tournament sort of thing, which I lost. And then I got another chance to enter another tournament, sort of last chance, but I won and then did very well in that tournament. So, I think it's a nice little kind of bookend that I'm coming back around post-tournament to fight him again. But, again, at the time, I was still more of a rookie. This one, I fought some very high-level competitors along the way. I've had some Match of the Year candidates along the way. I think experience is what's going to help me here be a different player than I was that first time. And, me and Henry have even had private conversations where, early on in my days, he was kind of giving me some advice because I wasn't a championship level competitor. But I think I have proven now I am a championship level competitor. I don't have a belt yet, but I think I've proven that I can be one of those elite players in title contention.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back, sir, as we will go ahead and introduce your opponent. He is a former Movie Battleground champion, entering with a record of 8 wins, 2 defeats, and 2 knockouts. He is Henry Confidential Sanchez. Sir, first off, welcome back to the Battleground for the first time this year. It is great, of course, to have you back. And obviously, last year did not end the way that you would have wanted it to, but you still come in here off the back of an incredible year, so much so that it earns you the chance to, if you win this match, immediately go back for it. How are you feeling coming into tonight?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, no excuses, because it's just how it goes. But also at the end of the year during that match, I'm a delivery driver, and it was during the holiday season. So I was slammed working, long hours, many days a week and everything. And it proved that, that doesn't matter, because it went to the second to last question. It was a 4-3 score. But, at this point, I'm, excited to work my way back and earn that shot, fresh mind. Like Pez said, he's a great friend, but hopefully after what happens today, he doesn't have any hard feelings and we can remain friends.
I mean, guys, I don't think there's anything that can change that cockiness that he carries with him. It's a good cockiness. It's an earned cockiness at this point, but it's there and it will not change. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in that buddy of yours, and we're going to go ahead and jump into this. And as this is a number one contenders match, the rules are slightly variated, but it is still a best of 5 rounds. It is a first to 3 points wins the match. Excuse me. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If the competitor picks up the first 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. However, we don't have the blind round today. Instead, if a competitor takes it to sudden death, we will be doing the speed round. However, we will explain that should we need to. In terms of the first 4 rounds, those will be exactly the same as you've always done. You will get 60 seconds to open your argument, followed by 2 minutes to expand. There will be a 4-minute open debate, and then there will be a 60-second closing period. Following that, I have 3 judges backstage in the form of Don, Kevin, and Sean. They will join us on screen at the end of each round, and based off what the competitors have said, will make their deliberation on who gets to vote. With all that said, guys, fun fact, this is both actually your 11th match in the league, at least in the reset. This is your 11th match each. So at this point, it's more of a formality. But do you guys have any questions? Are we ready to go?
Let's go.
All right. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. And funny enough, obviously, this is, I guess, technically a light spoiler for the title match. The final question of that match was the exact inverse of this question, if you watched all the way to the end. So why not start this match with this one? The question is, what is the worst Coen brothers film? They are a set of directors who are applauded for the many, many hits that their career has brought, but that doesn't mean they're infallible. They certainly have had less desirable films, and we're going to talk about them today. Now, with that said, behind the scenes, Henry, you do come in with the higher record, so you were deemed the favorite. You chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. Pez, you'll go first on 2 and 4, and that will carry over to the speed round should we need to. So, Henry, I'm going to go ahead and bring in your timer. I'm, of course, going to wish you guys the best of luck on a great match, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
So the Coen brothers have a unique style. They're highly praised, but they're also highly polarizing. They have a style that needs to kind of reach an audience like in the way that the audience expects. So I don't necessarily want to call them niche because they have plenty of mainstream films, but whenever they swing for the fences, 9 out of 10 times it works. The worst movie that they have released is The Lady Killers, and that is because not only do they swing for the fence in terms of just tone and style, but they also kind of crap on the original film of The Lady Killers. This is a remake of a classic film, and this is a film that if you watch this movie, you not only are you offended by just kind of the content that we see on screen, but you're also offended as a Coen Brothers fan because you know that they could do better. Like if you literally introduce this movie to anybody else, they would never even give The Big Lebowski, No Country for Old Men, Raising Arizona, Fargo. They would never give any of those movies a chance. So The Lady Killers is easily the worst film because the acting is terrible, the writing is terrible, and it is just offensive, and it's something that you can't even watch, in a boring way.
And time. All right, Pez, over to you.
So like Henry said, the Coens have a unique style and sort of their version of humor and a way that their dialogue kind of comes out. And to me, the worst one is one that doesn't even feel like a Coen Brothers movie because it just doesn't reflect that type of tone, that type of comedy, that type of even look that a movie does. And the one I picked for this question is Hail Caesar from 2016. Now, Hail Caesar just feels like an unfocused, lack of cohesive story film that doesn't have a through line that works in a Coen Brothers way. It feels like it should be some kind of anthology film, but it really isn't. Now, they would later venture into anthology territory with stuff like The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, but it's a movie that should have some kind of central narrative and doesn't. It just feels like a random series of sketches, feels like a random series of unfinished ideas that they had for other films, like leftover stuff they had in a drawer somewhere. You have somewhat of a central character with Josh Brolin, but that's not how the movie was marketed. It was marketed as this George Clooney film about him being kidnapped, and that's really just a side subplot in a series of just incoherent and unstructured vignettes.
And time. All right, we have The Lady Killers versus Hail Caesar. Henry, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
So the difference between these two films, apparently, for my opponent, is the marketing. Because Lady Killers, it presents itself as a wacky, dark comedy, about the kidnapping or taking over of this woman's house and this heist stuff and all that stuff, and it's goofy and wacky, and it's a play on the remake. Whereas Hail Caesar, apparently, you look at it, you just think it's a kidnapping film, but if at the end of the day, what determines the worst movie has nothing to do with the marketing. If you go back and you look at the Suicide Squad, if we're looking at the marketing, then that would be the best movie of all time, because that marketing was amazing, but the film that we actually got is terrible. So the marketing really has no basis on what the actual quality of the film is. If you look at Hail Caesar, like you said, Josh Brolin is the main character of that movie. He's the through line, and all the side characters, all the quote unquote anthology storylines that you brought up are just what we get going through and just a taste of life. But the subplots are really good. You have this goofy Russian subplot with Channing Tatum. You have Scarlett Johansson. You have the up and coming, regardless of what you think of the film Solo, because that has nothing to do with this. You have Aiden, what he did in Alden Ehrenreich and everything he did to earn the right to get Solo, and that movie was a mess in its own right. So it has nothing to do with his performance and his ability, in which he showcased here in this film. And then you actually do have the subplot with George Clooney being kidnapped by the writers, and that's a premise that is being pressed on, from just the unappreciated artists of film, especially back in the Golden Age. And even if you look at the Golden Age, a film that just came out last year, Babylon, that touches a similar era of film from a Academy Award-winning director in Damien Chazelle, and that still was no one really cared about that, not because of the actual quality of the film, but just because of, like you said, the marketing. That's just not a style of film people like. But if you actually look at the quality of film, it's fantastic. Or in Hail Caesar's case, it's at worst mid. Whereas The Lady Killers, it's a terrible film that actually has terrible acting. Tom Hanks, a two-time Oscar winner, is literally one of his worst performances of all time, if not his worst performance. You have Marlon Wayans, fairly fresh off Requiem and Dream, doing terrible. J.K. Simmons, who goes on later to win an award, he's terrible. And Ryan Hurst, who I love in Sons of Anarchy, he's terrible in this film.
And time. All right, Austin, back over to you.
The marketing was only a side aspect of that, to say that the audience was kind of sold a bill of goods, because when you go into the movie, George Clooney is basically a subplot. But like everything in this movie, it's a mishmash of subplots. There's no through line in the film. There's a lack of script that kind of brings everything together. Everything's literally, you see characters like Scarlett Johansson who never appear again. You see people like Jonah Hill who never appear again. You see the Alden Ehrenreich storyline, which never pops up again after his little interaction with Ray Fiennes. And my point is that the Coens are known for weaving together a really nice through line and really bringing a special story and kind of bring that Coen Brothers style, and like making all these characters work together to create something much better, altogether. But the fact that this movie should have worked better as like I said, either a TV show or an anthology about the Mannix character, the Josh Brolin character, having this one crazy day dealing with all these side plots. If that was the through line of the movie, it'd be fantastic. But it really isn't. It keeps trying to come back to the Clooney stuff, which doesn't work. And my point about the marketing is that the reasons like movies like The Artist or Babylon or these sort of movies about Hollywood, about making movies, don't do very well is because audiences don't really care about the golden age of Hollywood. Like it's one of those things where they talk all this love for the 50s and 60s of Hollywood. People don't care about that. This movie had 86% amongst critics and a 44% amongst audiences. Audiences don't care about that kind of stuff. They find it boring, and they're not as interested as these elite critics and these elite people within the business that love that kind of stuff and jerk off to everything old Hollywood. And the reason Lady Killers, you're talking about terror acting, this is one of Tom Hanks' most unique and fun and creative roles he's done since Forrest Gump back in 2004. Forrest Gump 94, 2004. One of his most unique roles. He spouts dialogue like a Tennessee Williams play come to life. It's a lot of fun, and he has a great interaction with Irma Hall, the main lady who kind of runs the house. They have a fantastic chemistry. It has a wonderful score that's a mix of Southern rap and gospel music. It uses those character actors brilliantly, who are throughout the film. They had this little low-tech kind of caper film. It's kind of like Ocean's 11 if it was in the Deep South, with a bunch of morons. And it's a ton of fun, and it has a cohesive story, and it's actually very funny.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion round. I don't need to instruct you how this works at this point, but I'm just going to say to everyone at home, strap in, guys. 4 minutes on the clock when the first person speaks.
So just to touch on what you're saying about the Tom Hanks performance, it's one of those things that no one talks about that, especially from an acclaimed performer like him because it is not good and it's terrible. Like if you look at Daniel Craig's performance in Knives Out with a similar draw and all that stuff, but people still talk about it, quote unquote recency bias, but people talk about it because it shines within his filmography. And if you look at the style of films like Logan Lucky do this same exact caper, hillbilly-ish romp and do it way better. This is a film that shits on not only the original, but just us as an audience because it's disrespectful to, all these characters.
You keep talking about the shits on the original, but this is not the first time they venture into remake territory. The thing with a remake, a good one, is that you take the original premise of the material and you make it your own, which they make it their own. Coen Brothers, you don't have to stick to the exact, tone and everything of the original one that with Alec Guinness. Like they make their own stuff with the Coen Brothers. They bring in the racial element, which actually works, and they there's a little bit of tension here and there. There's a hint of racism in the Deep South and in Mississippi, and like they actually play with that a little bit with the side characters and the people you're talking about, the character actors on the side. Zima and Ryan Hurst is playing a complete opposite of anything he's ever playing, showing his range, playing a character called Lump who doesn't ever change his facial expression because that's how stupid it is. It's what Chris Hemsworth should have done in something like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but what you're saying is, I know you're trying to praise it because you're not twisted because you're trying to, go about it. But when you actually watch this film, it's both one note out of his part, but it's also disrespectful of just that character. They have no depth, they have no arcs, they have nothing truly to say. It's literally just a dumb guy who's a football player who's just yes sir, all that stuff, and everything with J.K. Simmons and the Mountain Woman, all that's a subplot that just takes away the narrative of this.
But he's not as stupid as they portray him because he actually comes up through his stupidity of the idea to bribe Stephen Root, to get the heist done, and it's actually those moments where he's so stupid he's almost smart, it's that stuff that comes out.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that we were leading up to it. It doesn't feel earned, but everything in Hail Caesar, going back to Hail Caesar, I love how you tried to say that everything with Josh Brolin's character doesn't have anything, and all these actors come and go. But that's a social commentary on the golden age of Hollywood, where it just throws away these actors, and it just once they're done with them, they don't need them anymore. And that's the whole point of these storylines, because they come in, they serve their purpose for their scenes and their acting and all stuff, and the big names on the script, and then they're done with them. And that's a social commentary of it.
But that would work if Josh Brolin was in every scene, if we followed him as a sort of a one crazy day thing.
No, that's the point. That's the whole point, because
there are plenty of scenes that keep going back to George Clooney.
Exactly, but it acts like these actors, because that's why I said the subplot of the writers, the unappreciation of the writers, and why they're trying to take their step forward. They're trying to get their credit now, but then also with these actors. If Josh Brolin doesn't need to be in those scenes, because it's not about him in those scenes, it's about these actors until Hollywood is done with them and it gets rid of them, and it has that through line. And Josh Brolin, by the end, he actually has a narrative arc of, what am I going to do this for? Do I truly love? Am I going to get a better job that's going to give me better pay and it's going to be easier work, or am I going to do what I love? It's based on loyalty, and that's the whole point. It's the true hearts of Hollywood, and that's what we want. Lady Killer is disrespectful to the original and us as the fans, and Hail Caesar is a good commentary on both the writers, the actors, and also just being.
It obviously wasn't a good commentary on old Hollywood because nobody cared about it, and people like 7 years later about this movie, it's ended up on worse lists as well as the Lady Killers for whatever reason. But the Lady Killers actually feels like a Coen Brothers narrative, like it feels like one of their movies. Hail Caesar feels like it should have been directed by Ron Howard or something. Like it could have been directed by Damien Chazelle. Like it doesn't have any of that Coen Brothers charm or humor or even dark humor that they bring into a lot of movies like Fargo or No Country for Old Men, where they have those dark comedic moments. Lady Killer has that black comedy where there's stuff, them being killed by their own misfortune as they're trying to kill this old lady after they, complete the heist. And it has those dark elements where there's blood and there's guts and, all kinds of crazy stuff happening all around you. But it's done in that comedic tone, which Hail Caesar lacks.
Yeah, but the irony of that, what you're saying is that it fits like a Coen Brothers movie. Is the only reason you kind of coincided with the Coen Brothers movie is just because of how recent it came from Old Brother Where Art Thou, and it kind of has that swang. But if you actually look at the quality of the film, it's more like the scary movies where it's just poop jokes and fart jokes and it's crappy, and which not ironic that Marlon Wayans in this movie. And I wouldn't be surprised if you learned behind the scenes he had some help writing this, because not bad.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Henry, you are up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
All right, so I don't like to go on the numbers, but unfortunately, when it comes to the worst, you have to mention it. So the Lady Killers has a 54% critic approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 43 audience, versus Hail Caesar's 86 critics and 44 audience. So, obviously, whatever. Letterboxd, Austin, you're not on Letterboxd, but when you actually look at it, there's not a bunch of trolls on there. It's usually people trying to be critics. So Lady Killers has a 2.8 out of 5, and Hail Caesar has a 3.2. And on IMDb, Lady Killers is 6.2, and Hail Caesar is 6.3. So no matter who you're asking, it's a worst movie. So when you're thinking of what is the worst movie, you're collectively thinking of the Lady Killers. It's one of those questions where if you survey 100 people, Family Feud style on the street, you're going to get like 75, 80% Lady Killers, you might get one or two people that say Hail Caesars, then they might actually have an argument because of their own personal opinions of the marketing. They don't understand it, blah, blah, blah. When you actually look at the actual quality of the film of the Lady Killers, it is hands down their worst film, and it's something that you'll never go back for. If you actually go back for Hail Caesar, it's better on rewatches.
And time. All right, Austin, you have the final word of the round. Time starts when you begin speaking.
My point of the 8654 was that the audiences hate the movie and that the critics do, because again, like my point said, the critics jerk off to anything that loves old Hollywood, and it's a bunch of jokes that people themselves won't get. It's full of inside jokes that historians and critics will love, but nobody else will love. It's one joke the regular audience doesn't get. It's tedious, smug, long-winded, and unfunny. It's a disaster of literal, biblical, epic proportions. And if they wanted to actually comment on the structure of old Hollywood, there's a movie that came out the same year called Trumbo that does it way better, about the blacklisting of Hollywood, about communism, and all that stuff, does it way better than the Coen Brothers ever does. My point about the Lady Killers is that they have that black comedy in there. There's Three Stooges level kind of comedy that they've never done before, that they try and they actually succeed at. Everybody's giving it their all, 100%. And long before, 20 years before, Tom Hanks was playing a scummy kind of evil guy in Elvis, he was doing it in this movie 20 years before. And the movie has aged very, very well, and it's developed a cult following. That's the point, is if people would go back and actually watch this movie, they would discover a true hidden gem of the Coen Brothers that, yeah, sure, that wasn't well with the critics, but did well with regular audience members.
I think it lagged, but yeah, I think
it lagged. But yeah. I'm pretty sure I ran out of time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it did.
It's about on time.
You're right.
I knew I had 8 seconds left, so I'm pretty sure I ran my 8 seconds.
Yeah.
8 seconds left.
7.5, 8.
Okay.
All right, all good, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in the back after a good round there. Bring in our judges, and you guys will have just another moment to put your final thoughts together, as I did pull up some fact checks from the round. So the first thing was, this was an offhand mention earlier, but these are the likes of things I like to spend my time doing. Suicides. I'm assuming the movie that was referenced by Henry was Suicide Squad, not The Suicide Squad. Now, normally in the English language, you would say something like the Suicide Squad movie, but unfortunately, DC decided to use English syntax to name their sequels and not, just fucking numbers or something. So we have to definitively separate the two. Suicide Squad, The Suicide Squad. A comment was made about the Lady Killers being not the first remake they had ever made. That is technically incorrect. The Lady Killers is the first remake of a film the Coen Brothers ever did. However, it's not the first adaptation of something else they've done, as Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which came out a few years before as an adaptation of Odyssey. When looking at rankings of the Coen Brothers films, I pulled up 3 different lists from EW, Mashable, and /Film. All 3 lists each did have the Lady Killers listed last. Hail Caesar varied somewhere in the middle, usually falling between the 11th and 15th slot on their films. When it comes to talking about Hail Caesar and the lack of a through line for the plot, this was something that was actually changed over the course of the development of the film. When the movie was first pitched to George Clooney as far back as 1999, it was simply just about the developing of the ancient Rome film that he is filming, and it was meant to be sort of just about the making of this fictional Rome film with Clooney playing the lead. And then eventually, over the course of, 10 plus years, they developed it into a different idea, but kept the Clooney part around. And then, of course, with the final bit, Rotten Tomatoes is always to fact check them. Lady Killers has a 54% approval rating with a 6.1 out of 10 score. It has a 43% audience approval rating with a 3 out of 5 score. Hail Caesar does have a positive critic review with an 86% approval rating. 7.2 out of 10 was the score given. Audiences gave it a 44% approval rating with a 2.9 out of 5 score. All right, so with all that said, we're going to go to Don first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Henry on this. I think he had it right. Yeah. With you clarifying everything that he had said just a minute ago with where it ranks overall comparatively, I think, yeah, that really swayed me.
Okay. So first vote goes to Henry. Sean, I go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I don't have a plate today to write names on, but for me, it really comes down to the arguments that these two are giving me. I don't care about rankings, what everyone else is saying online. I'm caring about the words that are coming out of their mouths. And for me, I felt like Austin gets the point just for explaining and telling me how much of a departure Hail Caesar was from a traditional Coen Brothers films that we know and love. So I'm giving the point to Austin.
Okay, which means, Kevin, I'll jump over to you for the final vote. Who gets it, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, I actually feel very similarly to Sean. I'm giving Pez my vote. Hail Caesar. The way he said it, it's more like a TV show. Poor marketing. I feel like he defended that very well. And then he attacked Henry's pick of Lady Killers very well by saying that they brought in the racial element and it actually worked. So my vote goes to Pez.
All right, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back as we'll move on to the next question. All right, and so moving on to that second question, this was a viewer-submitted question. It was sent in to us by, in this instance, it is a fellow player of yours in the league, someone who, I like doing this, ironically enough, because they never write it with the intention of it going to someone, but I like to give these questions to people who are familiar, and Pez, you're very familiar with the person who submitted this question, and it is a great one. Because as we all know, Halloween Ends came out last year. The reception was very mixed. If you want to see an example of that, go check out a show these two guys did on ranking the Halloween franchise, because in that discussion alone, you can see the mixed reception.
If you want to see a mini Battleground match within like a larger non-Battleground thing, go watch that.
Yeah. So while David Gordon Green may be moving on to either revitalize or bastardize the Exorcist franchise later this year, we all know Halloween hasn't ended. It's an IP in Hollywood. Someone's going to try and reboot it eventually. So as submitted to us by Mr. Chad Webb, the question is, which director should be the next choice to take on the Halloween franchise? And quite frankly, of all the answers that were submitted, I think these two excited me the most, because I think you two both picked great up-and-comers within the horror franchise. And I'm curious to see the angles here. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and give you the timer. Pez, you are up first, so it'll start when you begin speaking.
So the director I chose is one who's recently been praised by Martin Scorsese as one who has a, quote, pure, unadulterated love for cinema. He's a guy who clearly shows love for the classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Shining, and Halloween. Takes influence from all different subgenres of horror and who's dived into a lot of different subgenres of horror. And that's the director of the most recent Pearl and X, that's Ty West. Ty West is a guy who has literally come almost out of nowhere. He's been making movies for quite some time, for literally about 15, 20 years or so. But he's been very, very recently pushed into the forefront because of X and Pearl, because he literally brought out a franchise we didn't know we needed within 1 year. He created a movie that was good, that got a little bit of buzz, but then created even more buzz when he had another movie already in the can, ready to go, that was a prequel to his own film that created, an even bigger fervor. And then when the movie came out, he had people calling for his star Mia Goth to be nominated for an Oscar. We haven't really seen that in the horror genre since Toni Collette and Hereditary. So I'm picking Ty West because he clearly knows how to handle, a franchise.
Right, that is time.
It was.
It was. I apologize. Okay. All right, Henry, over to you for your opening minute when ready.
All right, so I usually don't read from notes, but I have a pitch, so I actually want to, read it right and read it like a log line. So 40 years ago, we had an installment in the Halloween franchise that to this day is still misunderstood. Season of the Witch is a great movie that has the unfortunate baggage of following the first two films, which had Michael Myers at the peak of all the slasher killers. Instead of stupidly continuing the Michael Myers story, which technically they would do now, whether either via a reboot or a remake or some sort of weird Jason zombie thing. So instead of doing that, I'm pitching a soft reboot / sequel to Season of the Witch, directed by Leigh Whannell. Leigh Whannell has proven that he can not only handle franchise films, whether from the Saw franchise as a writer / creator, as well as the Insidious franchise, but he's also proven that he can create something 100% unique in Upgrade, and he's also proven that he can handle a entity in The Invisible Man. So Leigh Whannell is a director that is one of those that is going to be able to handle the sci-fi horror element of what Season of the Witch would be, an Invasion of the Body Snatcher style film, and it's going to handle be in the realm of mental health, similar to Smile, which is also Blumhouse. So it all makes sense. Leigh Whannell, the new Halloween Season of the Witch.
Time. All right. We're going to go ahead and go back over to you, Austin. 2 minutes when ready.
So Ty West is a director that has not only proven he can take care of actors, but he can take care of a script. He can write great stuff. He can get, like I said, Oscar level performances out of his actors, like Mia Goth, who can give some of the best stuff we've seen in horror in years. He cares about continuity between his films. When you watch Pearl and X back to back, it's very, very fluid and interesting. He can also handle any subgenre that the Halloween franchise has really gone after in the past or would go through in the future. In Valley of Violence is a bloody revenge film, which we've seen in the first David Gordon Green Halloween. He's done The Sacrament, which is a real world kind of cult film based on the Jonestown Massacre. He's done The Innkeepers, which is kind of a haunted house supernatural horror dealing with supernatural elements. You have House of the Devil, which is more of a supernatural cult film, which we've seen in the past, with the cult, the Thorn trilogy and Halloween, which is dabbled with that. And he's also dealt with, ironically enough, you're pitching an anthology series. Ty West has a lot of experience in that with segments in the VHS movies and the ABCs of Death movies, so he knows how to handle one-off shoots in anthology films. And he also has proven that he knows how to work with a small budget. He made X and Pearl for literally $1 million total, and they look like $20 million movies. Yeah, they look like they were shot by professional cinematographers like Roger Deakins. I mean, they look absolutely gorgeous. He's able to deal with both night and day with the Technicolor aspects of stuff like Pearl and make a real atmospheric nighttime horror with X. And obviously, again, stuff like House of the Devil, which is shot great in sort of a one location aspect. So he can do with great with just minor sets, with small locations, with a limited amount of actors. And if you really wanted to reboot Halloween, you need to either bring it back to basics or do what Henry said, because I was also going to sort of pitch a Haddonfield anthology series that sort of everything takes place in Haddonfield and kind of deals with the aspects of Michael Myers, but either has a central protagonist kind of flushing through in and out of everything, or going a full reboot style, but maybe even with a female protagonist in somebody like Mia Goth, because if you remember the original Halloween film, Michael Myers was just pitched as the Shape. So the shape of evil doesn't have to be male or female, it can be anything. So Ty West is clearly the man for the job. He would know how to handle this material with respect and with admiration.
And time. All right, Henry, back over to you.
All right, so I'm going to bring back both Elizabeth Moss and Storm Reed in this story. Storm Reed's character is going to be dealing with her father's mental illness that hasn't been taken seriously his whole life. It wasn't until one day when he is found dead where Storm Reed's character seeks help. The police chalk it up as a suicide given his mental health issues and the history, but Storm knows that despite the illness, her father would never do that. After looking for the help, she stumbles upon Elizabeth Moss, who is a psychiatrist that believes her, because back in the original time, around the season of the witch era, her father was actually a victim of the witch era, the cult stuff from Season of the Witch. So this film is going to be a perfect blend of, like I said, a body snatcher style horror with also the themes of mental health, which we got recently in Smile. And once again, other than the goofy marketing, if you actually watch that film, it deals with the mental health. It's a patient horror film that really handles that. And obviously we've proved that Leigh Whannell can handle that. Speaking of incredible performances, Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man, the only reason that one's not talked about in the same vein of Toni Collette and Hereditary is because it came out during the COVID year. That is literally the only reason. It's one of those movies that people either missed in theaters because of COVID, or they just haven't gone back to rewatch because they watched it the first time. My issue with Ty West is he just doesn't know how to kind of finish. If you really think about House of the Devil, ironically, the cult aspect of that film is kind of the downfall of it, because the mystery and the intrigue of what we're getting to up to that point is really great. But then when it gets to all the cult stuff at the end, it kind of just goes full circle and it just kind of rushes that ending. And then even in the Valley of Violence, it's literally something that could be a Western John Wick, but unfortunately the blood fest that you claimed is very sporadic and throughout, and it's not as over the top that you would want for a quote unquote slasher film, but it's also very patient, but not in the sense of 1978's Halloween, but more in the sense of just an old-timey Western. Both X and Pearl are movies that are fantastic, but the slasher element is the weakest part of it. Everything about the Pearl character, both from X and Pearl, is more in the vein of what we got in Rob Zombie's Halloween, of getting to know that character. And the whole point of The Shape is that we don't want to get to know. We don't want to know why he's the Shape and a mass murderer and a serial killer. We don't need all the backstory.
All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. Timer starts back up when the first competitor speaks.
Go ahead.
Smile has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, by the way, but keep bringing it up. I want a guy that's going to create with universes that he's kind of started with. So if you reboot with Halloween and let Ty West be the creative control, that's what I want to do. You're pitching a guy with Leigh Whannell who I want to see keep doing original ideas and building his own universes, like they've talked about with him building his own sort of universal monster universe with the Invisible Man and rebooting that sort of thing, like bringing in the Ryan Gosling for the Wolfman, things like that. I want to see him continue the universe that he's already built and create traded upon, and more of that action thing. When every time Lee Winnell has dove into horror, and really is only once, because Invisible Man is not a horror movie, it's Insidious 3, where he played in a thing that he was kind of a part of, but not really, just as an actor, and it failed miserably. And everybody says that's the worst one out of the entire thing. So I don't want to see him go back to horror. I want to see him keep making like action sci-fi movies. That seems to be what he's good at.
Yeah, everything with the smile is points, because I'm bringing up that the whole point of my film is going to be the mental health thing. So it's just a basis of my argument of why that works, and that storyline is going to work. I love how you just contradict yourself immediately when you said I want Lee Winnell to do something original, and then you mentioned all the remakes of the monster movies. That makes no sense. Ty West is one of those
because he rebooted the monster things with a new
but it's not original. He's going to be rebooting Season of the Witch. You just contradict yourself. That makes no sense.
It's literally just the title. It had nothing to do with that. And my point with
but it's still an entity. Season of the Witch. It's not going to do anything exactly like Season of the Witch. It's going to be a soft reboot based in name only, because everything that we're getting from a Halloween franchise, the whole reason that everyone hated the entire Corey Cunningham storyline Halloween Ends is not because of that storyline was bad, but because it happened in the third film. So we can have plenty of storylines that isn't Michael Myers specific in the Halloween franchise, and Halloween, like you said, isn't a Michael Myers franchise other than the fact that of just history. We can tell these types of stories, and the Season of the Witch is going to do a great job of doing that, because it's going to handle the body snatcher, it's going to handle the mental health. Elizabeth Moss and Storm Reed. Storm Reed just proved in Missing this year that she's fantastic. She can lead a movie of her own. So the fact that now at this point, 3 years later, 4 years, however long this will take, that they're just going to be, they're going to hammer it home. And everything that you're pitching for, whether an anthology, Haddonfield film, that sounds boring and uninteresting. And if you're bringing the slasher element to it,
literally is just what you pitched. You pitched a thing that Halloween 3 was supposed to be the start of an anthology. You're
but I pitched
your own idea.
Thing. You didn't even have a storyline to yours.
You're now attacking the anthology thing, which was your idea.
No, I'm attacking your anthology ideas, because you're not actually pitching an idea of why he would be a great choice. You're literally just cash grabbing his name. That's all you're doing. I actually have an idea and why Lee would fit.
I said it could be that, but it could also go and do a complete reboot route where in name only it's Halloween.
Another reboot.
Going back to the shape of evil and
another reboot.
Changing the shape. Yeah,
so you just want the exact same thing over and over and over again, just like another Batman, another Spider-Man.
What happened?
Everything you said with Ty West, you're literally either creating a story that's going to be a slow, drawn-out thing like the original Halloween that at this point doesn't age up in terms of pacing and quality, or you're pitching the exact same thing, or you're pitching something that is going to be a slasher and it's going to be inside the mind of the shape, which we got in Rob Zombie's Halloween that no one wants.
Well, the reason why nobody wanted it is because Rob Zombie was doing it. He's not the filmmaker that Ty West is. Rob Zombie can't get Oscar-level performances out of his characters. He doesn't have Oscar-level scripts. He doesn't know how to set up his own little world. Half of that movie, that original movie that he made, was just literally a shot-for-shot remake, pretty much of the first Halloween of 45 minutes. The exact same movie. My whole thing is, again, the question itself is a reboot question. It's a reboot question of how to handle, the Halloween franchise, because you're literally starting up whatever it is. You're going back and either slapping away everything that's come before it, or you're starting from new or doing some whatever. Like, the whole point is that Ty West would know how to do that and bring a fresh angle to it. Lee Winnell is just going to bring some kind of action sci-fi angle to it, which again he's good at, but I don't want that for Halloween. We already had that with Halloween Kills, and we all saw how that turned out.
Yeah, but like what you said, you just said that Ty West be a perfect choice for this exact same thing, but nothing's proven that. Like I said, everything with X and Pearl, the slasher element is the weakest part of that, and everything that we got in the Valley of Violence and even in House of the Devil, the cult stuff is not as interesting as the build-up and the mystery. And the Valley of Violence, the revenge film, the John Wick style action, bloody action stuff, that's not really even that interesting. Lee Winnell's proven that he can handle different subgenres, he can handle entities, he can handle franchises, he can handle his own writing, he can do it all, and he can get great performances out of his actors. You knocked Insidious Chapter 3, but it's one of those films that it was a great prequel, and now you learned about everything that we've got, and it ties in with those three.
And time. All right, so we have 1 minute closings left for each competitor. Austin, I'll go to you first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
With Lee Winnell, if you put him in charge of the Halloween franchise, you're going to take away his creative potential and what he's been doing with kind of playing in these original movies that he's been bringing up with. The fact that, I want to see more of his sort of Invisible Man universe. I want to see him set his own thing. Everybody loved Upgrade. I'd love to see a sequel to Upgrade. Lee Winnell, you put him in the Halloween, it's going to bring him down. He's already in the mainstream. It's going to bring him down. My director, Ty West, is an indie filmmaker who would be boosted and benefited from something like the Halloween franchise being brought into it, bringing that fresh take, much like David Gordon Green kind of pulled out, at least with that first film, the 2018 film, of where Rob Zombie had dragged it down from in Halloween 1 and H2. So, there's a thing where if you bring in a fresh filmmaker, a young filmmaker who has some good ideas, who can bring those good performances, who can bring those good actors and bring in that great chemistry, you can elevate a franchise that at this point, people are very, like you said, very unhappy with Halloween Ends. Like some people were, some people weren't, but it's in a bad place right now. And people are very high on stuff like X and Pro right now. They want to see where Maxine, his concluding chapter, he's going to succeed where Halloween Ends failed.
And time. All right, Henry, back over to you. Final minute of the round, right?
I want to touch on something you said at the beginning, talking about how Ty West would be able to handle a small budget thing. Upgrade only had a $5 million budget, and The Invisible Man only had a $7 million budget. And if you look at those films, you would assume that they're minimum 50 each because of what he's able to do with the sci-fi elements of that. So that's fantastic in his writing, but also his direction and his vision and his eye. He's also going to be able to bring out the fantastic performances like we got in Elizabeth Moss. We also got Aldous Hodges in Invisible Man, which he was able to move on into Black Adam. Regardless of what you think of the film, he was able to get a big name property like that. Leigh Whannell is a perfect choice for this because of that exact sci-fi element. You're talking about how you want him to do his own things, but the whole reason is if he goes into the Halloween franchise, which is part of the question, like you said, it would be the Season of the Witch angle. It wouldn't be another exact same Halloween part. Is why everyone doesn't like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, because of the retread of the, oh my God, it's the same thing over and over again. Season of the Witch, if you go back now 40 years later, you actually have a story of, you can continue the elements of the mental health and the mystery and the detection of why these people are dying and why they're not holding up over time. And you have Elizabeth Moss Reed at the helm, and they're going to crush that. So Leigh Whannell, fantastic choice for the new Halloween film of Season of the Witch.
And time. All right. Excellent round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back and bring the judges to the front. Again, a couple things just to look up and fact check, so you guys will have a moment to put your thoughts together. Okay, so in terms of, because it was brought into question in a couple different ways, Leigh Whannell's connection to horror. So as a director, obviously, when Leigh Whannell only began directing within the last 8 years. As a writer, however, he has screenplay credits on the first 3 Saw films before exiting that franchise. He also wrote the horror film Dead Silence for James Wan. In terms of specifically to the Insidious franchise, aside from directing Insidious Chapter 3, he is not just an actor in the films, although he does act in the films. He was the lead writer for 1, 2, 3, 4, and he developed the original story for 3, although somebody else would go, or for 5, excuse me, although somebody would go on to finish the screenplay. And then the other element was in terms of which of his films are horror films. Well, obviously Insidious Chapter 3 is a horror film. Upgrade is not classified as a horror film. However, The Invisible Man is, if you want to technically call it a thriller, so it be, but it is classified as sci-fi horror. In terms of moving on from there, Leigh Whannell's connection to the future of the Universal Monsters universe, as far as I could find, is not in terms of rebooting any kind of universe. It's only connected to making a sequel to The Invisible Woman, which the last we heard of that was in July of 2020. Now, obviously, other things could happen. Another thing that was referenced in terms of Universal Monsters was the Wolfman project starring Ryan Gosling. At one point, it was believed that Leigh Whannell would be attached, but he is not. The director of the project is Derek Cianfrance, who previously directed Ryan Gosling in Blue Valentine and The Place Beyond the Pines, who will be directing that. And then finally, in terms of working on micro budgets, both of these directors have worked on small budgets. As was said, the highest budget that Leigh Whannell's ever worked with was $7 million for The Invisible Man. In terms of Ty West, he spent $1 million each on X and Pearl. That's the highest budget he's ever worked with. So obviously far smaller, but still both can work on a small budget. With that said, though, Sean, I go to you. Based off of the arguments, who gets your vote and what was the thing that sold you?
It's very good round. Very tough for me to decide. There's a lot of great points back and forth. Yeah, this is tough for me personally. I am gonna have to give the point to Austin again. Just he explained the different types specifically of horror films that Ty West directed, what specific genre of horror they were in, subgenre, and how he could take different elements of those and apply them to a new Halloween film. So that breakdown for me really went into Ty West's directing style and skills and what he could bring in and how he could tap into so many different things. So I'm going with Austin.
Okay. Kevin, that means we'll go to you next. Who gets your vote?
Austin did a good job of expressing what Ty West could do in this for this question, but I definitely think Henry brought it with his pitch. I like the pitch, and I like the effort that he put into the pitch, going into the depth, and going into the mental health stuff. I think that's like a really important thing for people that kind of gets glossed over. So yeah, I like the anthology idea. I know that there's a little bit of back and forth there, but yeah. Anyway, just for the idea alone, I'll go with Henry.
Okay, so it is a 1-1, which means Don will go to you for the tiebreak this time around. Who gets your vote?
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Austin. I think he just gave me more as far as why Ty West would be better for this, reboot, or however he wanted to bring it back. But yeah, I think he just gave me more overall on why his pick was better.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back, and we will move on to question number 3 of this matchup. And for question 3, we are moving into the Monsterverse, which is infinitely more popular than I ever thought it would be. Can I just say, I've written more Monsterverse questions for the fucking Movie Battleground than I ever thought I would. It's actually impressive how many people like these movies.
It's just between me and John and Alan. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's true. Let's stop talking about the films, though. Let's instead talk about maybe the biggest element of the films. Question is, what is the best battle in any Monsterverse film? And again, for those at home who this may be your first time watching, the Monsterverse in the modern era is defined as the franchise name that is Kong and Kong, Skull Island, and the Godzilla films. That is the name that they've given it. So for the sake of Movie Battleground, the Monsterverse is anything classically within those franchises. So the modern franchise, classic Godzilla, and classic Kong they can choose from. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into it. Henry, you are up first this time around. The timer will start for you when you begin speaking.
So whenever you go into a question like this, you know that this is not a mainstream category amongst the community. So you know that this is a super fan that picked this. And so when you hear this argument, you're going to hear two angles of this. You're going to hear epic and cool, and you're going to hear some bullshit fanboy, revolutionary, good for the culture, or good, blah, blah, blah bullshit. The best battle in any of these films is Kong and Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. So I don't know exactly how we're going to classify it, because it's about 12 minutes long in total, which starts with Mechagodzilla versus Godzilla, and then extends over to Kong versus Mechagodzilla. So I don't know the semantics we're going to deal with that, but it's about, at least if we do the entire one, it's about 12 minutes long. And the reason that this one's the best one, because it's visually fantastic. The choreography is great. You have the depth and the arc of Godzilla and Kong as characters. You have Mechagodzilla as just a badass motherfucker, both visually as also just empowering. You have the scale that you see from the towers, and you also the people that you see below, multiple camera angles that showcase that, and the effects are actually fantastic, unlike some other bullshit.
And time. All right, Austin, over to you for your opening minute.
So the movie I went with is the 1995 Godzilla fan classic, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, which is 1995. It's the end of the Heisei era of Godzilla, which is a continuity that started in 1984 with the return of Godzilla, aka Godzilla 1985. It started kind of a through-line continuity of several films that all had the same Godzilla in the whole thing. And the final battle of this film is great because it actually depicts the death of Godzilla, which is the first time that had ever been done in the Godzilla film history. And it harkens back to the original 1954 film. You bring original actors back from that movie. You bring the idea of the oxygen destroyer inadvertently creating a new monster in Destroyer, and it has that emotional element that movies like Godzilla vs. Kong don't have, and it actually pays respect to the actual history of Godzilla, pays respect to these characters, gives them the spotlight that they need. And the actual final battle is fantastic. It has great practical effects, which is one thing that these new movies are missing, is a practical element to it. It's a mess of CGI now, and so much so that 1996 the Japanese Academy Award gave the Academy Award for Special Effects to Godzilla vs. Destroyer.
And time. All right, Henry, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
Oh, sorry, I was sleeping listening to you talk about that boring ass fucking battle. It's models, and that's revolutionary for the time. You're gonna say a bunch of nerdy shit. I'm gonna use most of my 2 minutes to kind of explain this from an objective perspective, not a subjective, personal bias perspective, because I guarantee the judges have never seen this. So I'm actually going to draw it out. It's model based, both Godzilla and the Destroyer, and Baby Godzilla, Junior, whatever they call him. And it's one of those things when you actually looked at it, literally looks like what you're doing. If you smash those together right now, that's exactly what it looks like on the film. You can knock my film for being CGI and the lack of the practicality of it, but when you actually look at it, it's beautiful. It actually looks good, and you still have the stakes of both the characters in the film, of the military, as well as the little deaf girl. But you also have the arc that you get from Godzilla and Kong, who've been battling up to that point. It was literally 2-1 in Godzilla's favor, but it took the actual arc and the emotion of Godzilla helping Kong with his flames to power up the axe to destroy Mechagodzilla, and you can knock it of the liquid or something like that. But just like in any fight, if someone does something for a second and takes them out of their elements for a millisecond, it didn't shut down Mechagodzilla, but it stopped him for a second. And as soon as he did that, all the momentum went that. And that's a 3-way battle there with Kong, Godzilla, and the people. So humanity came together to overcome Mechagodzilla. But everything that you get in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, like I said, it's just a bunch of models. Whenever it's so stiff and slow paced, and it's one of those things, I swear to God, I'm not even saying this just for the debate. There were multiple times throughout this film that I was like, oh, this is the battle. All right, let me take my notes. Oh no. 2 minutes, 3 minutes goes by, and then it stops. I'm like, is it over? What are we doing? And then next thing you know, it cuts back. Oh, this is the battle. I swear to God, it happened 3 or 4 times where I literally did not know what the battle was. So my notes are super long for this because I was writing for multiple different scenes in about a 25-minute span. And the final 2, 4, 5 minutes of it, when the actual death of Godzilla you got, sure, that part is beautiful, but that is not the actual battle element of this, the duel of these two. Everything that you got is literally just Godzilla smash and destroy it, and then going into buildings. And I swear to God, they explode like a Michael Bay film. It's not crumbling. It's an exact explosion. It makes no sense.
And time. All right, Austin, back over to you.
So the reason that I chose this movie and this battle is the movie has an element that is not present in a lot of the other Godzilla movies, where Godzilla himself is not just a threat physically and knocking over buildings and blasting his atomic rays all over himself. He's actually melting down in the movie. This is the burning Godzilla, that his core is melting down. So if he actually dies, his radiation will actually render Tokyo uninhabitable. And that creates an extra threat going into the battle, an extra layer of tension. Not only do you have Justice Destroyer, who's literally a demonic being out of hell, and the way he enters the movie later in the film in his perfect form, I should say, is very, very, very beautiful. It's like literally somebody rising out of hell. He prevents not only a literal threat there, but the army and the people element of them don't know what to do with this fact. They don't know, should they kill Godzilla and literally render Tokyo inhabitable? Should they let the other one win? But they need Godzilla to destroy There's a whole thing of that. And your disrespectful comments are fine, saying that it's just models bashing together. It's the same disrespect you hear about people not giving voice actors their credit, not giving monster actors their credit. The guy in the suit, Kipichiro Satsuma, is actually giving a great nuanced performance. If you actually talk about monster performances, there's something that goes into that to bring emotion through movement. And it's something like akin to how mimes can create movement. Silent actors can create emotions through their movements. He played Godzilla through all the Heisei films. He takes great care of that. The director, Takao Okawa, directed some of the best movies in the series, including Godzilla and Mothra Battle for Earth. It takes great pride in setting up great shots, creating actual weight. The reason why it's not just models smashing together, you have real weight to the fights because there are people in those suits really smashing each other, falling into actual practical sets, falling into these miniature sets that are super detailed. That's also disrespectful, Henry, to the people who built these sets that are incredibly detailed. And you have an actual weight and an emotional element to the film and actual stakes, as opposed to Godzilla versus Kong, which just has CGI. It has all the weight of a video game cutscene with just CGI things flying around all over the screen. There's no weight, there's no element, there's no sense of size, there's no sense of scale, and there's no sense of stakes in the whole movie either.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. Timer starts when the first competitor speaks.
Well, good thing that you're bringing up the whole movie, not the battle, the epicness of the battle. It does actually show the scale. Like I said, there are multiple camera angles from inside a building when Mechagodzilla smashes Godzilla into the building, and there's a camera in the actual building, and you actually see them towering over the building, as well as a different angle that's unique and perspective that you don't get in your model-based ones. You also have shots from the ground floor where you actually see the people and how they're towering over. You see wide-scale things of them towering over, and you actually see the epic battle and the great movements. Yours is just...
You see actual overhead shots. You see very creative overhead shots.
Yeah, and they clearly look like models from over.
You have the people people in the foreground is the thing the Godzilla movies are great at, is creating that scale where they're in the foreground and the creatures are in the
And
background.
in your scene, they're in helicopters and they're in top of the buildings. They're not even on the floor. It's not until the end when you actually have the tanks go in where you actually see that scale that you're trying to say. Like I said,
you see that in the final battle. That's what I'm talking about.
People have never seen this movie. You're going to pitch them a bunch of bullshit and say the revolutionary thing. No, this scene fucking sucks. This movie was not that great at all. And everything that you're actually praising for this is behind the scenes bullshit that we don't care about, or it's actually the actual battle. It's boring, stiff, and trash.
You feel every blow in this movie when they're together, when they're fighting toe to toe. There's parts where Destroyer is slashing him. You see chunks of flesh flying off. Again, the detail in the suit, chunks of flesh flying off. You see blood. When Godzilla shoots a ray right into his chest, you see Destroyer vomiting up green liquid, like literally vomiting. That's a level of detail you don't see in stuff like Godzilla versus Kong, because they don't care about that. There's a disrespect for those characters and disrespect for a character of Mechagodzilla that's been in 5 live-action movies and 2 animes that is reduced to a literal cameo and something that's just thrown in there as a last-minute desperate attempt.
Because the movie isn't called Godzilla versus Kong versus Mechagodzilla. The whole point is the story arc. And once again, you want to bring story arc to point, that's good. Godzilla and Kong, they come together, they fight. And the reason I picked this battle of the other ones, because you know that one of them is going to win that battle. The whole point of why this is the best battle is because they come together, they work together to overpower a monster thing in Mechagodzilla.
Should be the primary antagonist of the film if you're going to do that, or the primary protagonist, as he was in many of the original Godzilla films, where he was the protagonist. The whole thing about Damien Bashir's thing, see, he has a legitimate reason for creating a human-made Titan to protect us from all these other monsters that are literally destroying everything.
And it's just like every other sci-fi film. It backfired on him, and that's the whole point of why you don't want to use that. It takes forever for that to power up, and the whole point of that coming together at the end is that Kong and Godzilla had to work together. And I like how you say that there's no stakes in this. Before that, Kong literally broke his shoulder, fractured, separated shoulder. He had to put that together. You actually felt that crack when he did that. Godzilla is down on the ground bleeding after it's getting attacked. When Kong, once I said the epicness of him, Godzilla hitting the axe and then him slashing Mechagodzilla, there's oil and all this stuff, and he rips off the head and he drinks the oil. That's so much detail.
Yeah, and as soon as they power up the axe, he slices through it as easy as pie, as easy as a knife through butter. I mean, it takes almost no effort to actually
because of teamwork, and choreography. Yours is just
and that's disrespectful to the classic Mechagodzilla. Is very, very hard to defeat. There's a ton of things that have to take him out in the original films. Again, he's reduced to a cameo. They had if you're going to do that, you should save Mechagodzilla for another film. If it's Godzilla versus Kong and your final battle isn't even Godzilla versus Kong, it's them two teamed up. It's also,
we had 3 up to that point. We got everything that we wanted, and it was
it's a middle finger to the audience who just want to see Godzilla and Kong fight.
We got plenty of that, and even during that, it took a while. The very end, the showdown.
You didn't pick that fight. You picked the final fight.
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is the full arc, because like you said, mine is hollow. It has nothing to it. It has the full arc. And I want to get this for the record. You're knocking me for bullshitting, for talking smack about like the stuntmen and all that stuff, but you're talking shit about the CGI people, trying to knock that. This is some of the most beautiful CGI we ever seen. The detail in Kong's look about the fur and all stuff, everything with Godzilla. Again, like I said, it all looks beautiful.
You don't have people on the screen. You don't have as much.
You have them literally on the ground. You have the little death girl with the most emotion. Literally that little death girl.
She has nothing to do with the fight. She has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, she woke up Kong. She literally gave him the power, the heart, and the emotion, and she's the one who told it Kong is not an enemy. Or Godzilla.
All right. We're going to go into the final minute of the round. Henry, you're back up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
At the end of the day, what is the best battle in any MonsterVerse film is going to be subjective in terms of what you see. Obviously, everything that Pez is going to say, he hands down literally believes this, and he's just wrong in my opinion, because I don't want to see a bunch of models smashed together. I respect his opinion outside of the debate, but that's not something we want. That's not something the mainstream audience in today's world wants. If you actually go and look at Kong versus Godzilla, and you actually look at like the approval rate and all that stuff, people like that movie. They may not be the best movie of all time, but who cares? Because everything that you praise for that movie is everything Godzilla and Kong related, and everyone is praising that epic fight at the very end because they work together, and you actually shows the choreography. It has the stakes. There's plenty of scenes where you see them towering over buildings. You see them stumbling and rumbling, and they're smashing into destruction. You see all that. It's not just like some Man of Steel stuff where all that is the background. There's actually stakes where you see the buildings coming over. You see all the girls, all the people on the ground. And like I said, you're knocking the little girl for not being part of that fight. She literally is the one that woke up Kong, and she's the one who let him know that Godzilla is not an enemy. And that's when Godzilla charged the axe, which defeated Mechagodzilla for the win.
And time. All right, Austin, over to you. Final minute.
Look, there's an unspoken rule in all these Godzilla movies that they're either big disaster dramas or they're big action set pieces. And while most Godzilla movies are just action set pieces, this one, again, has that emotional weight and those stakes with Godzilla and what he's going through. The reason why I bring up what he's going through earlier in the movie is because it directly pertains to the final battle and the conclusion of what could happen if Godzilla dies and blows up. And the fact that the people in this movie, even in every other Godzilla movie, you see the military being completely unsuccessful. They actually help in defeating Destroyer. They help in containing the Godzilla disaster at the end by freezing him and kind of containing some of the radiation. And the movie gives a slight sense of hope at the end of the movie with the Godzilla Jr., who I didn't even mention, who's in the film, absorbing all that radiation, being reborn as Godzilla. So despite the death of Godzilla and the emotional toll that takes on people at the end of that movie, at the end of that epic battle, which you feel with real actors, real weight, real models, real everything, as opposed to a CGI cutscene from a video game, it absolutely wraps up not only this whole series, it's a thrilling chapter to the entire Godzilla franchise in general.
And time. All right. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back. We will bring the judges in. Not a lot to fact check there. Everything felt pretty well researched, and anything that I could have would have taken a little too long to find. So we're going to go straight to the opinions. Kevin, to you first. Who gets your vote at some point?
Mine, this was a tough one for me. I'm not familiar with either of these films, so I had to go strictly off of what the debaters said, but a well-fought debate nonetheless. So I am going to go with Pez. His knowledge of the film and the way he went in depth about how they respected the IP and the characters, the actors, the practical effects.
Okay. All right, Don, down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with him too. I think what really got me too, though, was he had a really good counter with the. It's called Godzilla vs Kong, and the final battle isn't even Godzilla vs Kong. So that was a really good comeback. But overall, I think with what he said about the disrespect to the creators of this and everything, and how he was sort of just diminishing that it was just models. I didn't really like that, so I went with Austin. Yeah.
Okay. All right, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit everyone in the back because your winner by a final knockout score of 3-0, Austin Howell. I don't even know where to begin. First off, I don't think anybody saw a result like that coming. I think going into this, going off of the experience that Henry has, the momentum that you had, I think there was a 50-50 shot that anyone could have won. I don't think anyone would have predicted the way that you won. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. Like I said, he beat me in the first official time we played. He beat me in the kind of unofficial time we played with the exhibition. But yeah, I mean, realistically, it just means on record we're 1-1 against each other. So we're due for a rubber match at some point, for a best of 3, to come back together at some point, which I'm sure will be an epic clash. But yeah, I mean, Henry is obviously no one to take lightly. He's a champion. Like he defended the belt. It wasn't just he won the title. And then he defended the belt like he was a defending champion and defeated a lot of really strong people that beat me. He beat Chad Webb, who again, I faced early in my career. I feel like I would put up a better fight now, but I think I talked about at the beginning, my experience facing these championship level competitors along the way has prepped me for that thing. Facing guys like Chad, facing guys like John, facing Jay Burns not long ago, who went on to get a title shot and win the tournament. It seems to me, Aaron, if you want to get a title shot, you beat me. And if you want to get a shot at that title, you beat me. You got to go through me in a roundabout way. But yeah, I'm very happy with my performance. My strategy the last couple of matches has been to just hammer those early questions and go for the knockout. As you saw, I got 3 knockouts in a row, in that tournament. And I almost knocked out Will, not quite, but I got the first 2 questions, and then got that the one on the 4th. But that has been my strategy, just to hit as hard as possible in my solo times, especially not fall into traps in the debate thing, just kind of stick to the question. And that's what I've been doing. So I'm very happy with my performance tonight.
Absolutely, as you should be. And so we will move on. For anyone watching at home, This is your final warning. If you have not checked out the match last week, please go check it out. But with that, you will be moving on to our second title match of the year, where you will be taking on defending champion Amaru Moses, who was able to, took him all the way to the last question, but he was able to take Jay out in a brilliant back and forth matchup. However, the interesting part is when asked in that match who he would like to play, of course he showed, the due diligence towards the level of competitor that Henry is. But when forced to pick, he actually said he wanted to play you.
Wow.
And his reasoning was, when you first debuted back in, the end of 2021, he said you were one of the players that stood out to him the most of the rookies. But he also said, being the competitor that he is and the competitiveness level that he has, there's also that thing in the back of the brain of, he's impressive, but I can beat him. And he wanted to sort of put that to the test. Now he's going to have the opportunity, and vice versa. You're going to have the opportunity to go for him. How are you feeling about that?
No, I mean, Rue's very level-headed when he fights. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't, get very emotional. He sticks to the arguments, kind of like I try to do most of the time, that I've avoided doing in some of my early matches where I got a little too over-emotional and kind of lost focus. But yeah, I mean, that's cool that he respects me enough to want to face me and actually looks at me as, a legitimate competitor to him. I appreciate that. But yeah, he's going to be tough. I mean, he took out Henry to get that belt. If he took out Jay Burns, obviously Jay Burns, I took Jay to the blind round. So don't get me wrong. Like, me and him are, that match could have gone either way. But yeah, if he took out Jay, that's going to be a task. So I'm going to have to prep harder than I've ever prepped, bring my notes as clear as I could possibly bring them, and use my time wisely. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty cool that within, you said I debuted. Yeah, it's hard to even remember now. I've had so many matches, but it wasn't that long ago, I guess, just late to 2021, right? Like, fall. Yeah. So, I mean, literally within a little over a year and some change, I've gone from complete rookie to title contender legitimately now. So I couldn't be happier with that. I've had a few stumbles along the way, but they've all been building blocks to where I'm going to go next. So hopefully I can prep for Amaru and take the belt.
Absolutely, sir. Well, once again, I wish you a congratulations. If anything, this win solidifies the awe that we all had over yourself and Chad's match back in the day, because while Chad was the first rookie of the rookie class to make it to a title match, you are the second of the rookie class to make it to a title match. So congratulations. That match will upload for everyone at home in the first week of May. We will record before then.
Well, that adds a little extra for me because I got some studying to do with that match, so to see the tactics and everything. So yeah, that'll be helpful for me to get some last minute look at his tactics and his strategy. So see exactly how you beat Jay and things like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, till then, sir, congratulations. We will see you next time on the show. I'll go ahead and sit you in the back and bring in Henry. And the first thing I'll lead with is it's a tough loss to take in any situation. It's a tough loss to take in the situation that we're in at this moment, but it was an admirable performance. I think all of your answers were great. I think you had a lot of great supporting points to back them up. Certainly with that Halloween question, both of you guys taking sort of deflecting angles to each other and how you were approaching pitching that. The answer is obviously not good, but I will still ask the respective, how are you feeling?
I'm happy for my boy. He did fantastic. He showcased his abilities as a debater. This is one of those situations where, you could, if you just saw the results, you're like, oh, wow, he must have mollywopped him. But it's like, that's not the case at all. And, just like every debate, it just depends on the judges. People, you have a perspective and they either align with your thoughts or they don't. And, today they just, aligned with Pez's opinions because, you can tell that, in their deliberation, they were hesitant both, pretty much the entire time. They took their entire 30 seconds to a minute to, reveal their votes because, it was hard for them to make that final decision. So once again, that doesn't reflect on the score, but yeah, it's one of those things that, it's unfortunate. I've never not scored a point. So, I mean, that's obviously, that's a knock in of itself, but, Pez is, he's a beast and, it is what it is. That's just how it goes.
Absolutely, man. Well, I don't like to dig in situations like this. There isn't anything, at least in the immediate future, for me to dig at. All I can say is, while this does, for the moment, bring an end to your attempt to claim the title once again, you can still reflect back on the incredible year you had last year. And I'm sure with obviously your want and some matches ahead of you that you're not that far away from getting it again. I mean, at 8-3, you literally don't move in the rankings because there's nobody that has near enough wins to you to bump you down. So you are a part of an elite class. Today is a stumble in that elite class and a tough one. But don't ever think of yourself as a part of that, sir. You are an incredible debater, and today everyone has that game. It didn't go your way, and it's unfortunate to see it happen. But I do hope we'll have you back again in the future. And until then, sir, I wish you the best of luck on some time off, as we'll go ahead and sit you in the back. And guys, that again, not a result I think anybody would have picked coming out of this, but certainly I think we can look and say that Pez's growth as a competitor, with 4 knockouts, he now definitively again holds the title for most knockouts for an individual player. He briefly held that record in the tournament until Joe matched it, but he does now hold the most knockouts. I have a hard time seeing a title match ending in a knockout, but God damn it, if anyone's proven they could try and do it, it is certainly Pez with his record. But till that match, till the next time that we have Henry back, I want to say thank you to both of these guys for some incredible performances tonight. I want to say thank you to my judges, Don, Kevin, and Sean, for being here. Thank you to all of you. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, interact with the video, and stick around for more. As I said, that Rue Pez title match will be coming to you on an upload in the first week of May. And in the time in between then, we have a lot of incredible matches. So tune in, stick around, and on behalf of everyone involved with the show, my name is Aaron Knoll. We will see you next time. Take care, everybody.